Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the place where we talk about all things woo woo, starting on the East Coast, making our way to the West, holding down the fort on both sides, talking about the highs, lows, and everything in between. So, if this is your first time joining us, YouTube or Facebook, we're going to see comments from both sides. Remember that you need to click on the broadcast to participate, and we want to hear from you. Also, you're going to want to like and subscribe so you know when we're on here. It's usually every Thursday, but sometimes it's whenever we want. So, with that in mind, I am your host over here on the East Coast. I am Dahlia Rose, holding down the fort at Crystal Cognizance, where we serve our local community with crystals, herbs, healings, intuitive work, all kinds of things. And then I have a lovely host by my side as well who will be here with me.
Hi, I'm Katrina Rasbold, West Coast. I am a co-owner of Crossroads Metaphysical Store, and we specialize in energetic healings and cleansings. We make our own magical products and also have a number of vendors in our store as well that make their own magical products. You can find us at crossroadsoccult.com.
Yes, you can. Candles are amazing. Everything that comes from Crossroads is amazing. I mean, I
Thank
use them.
you.
I use everything from for personal use, and then I think I've bought in every book that's possible. Katrina's also an author, and there's some things that aren't in print anymore, but I'm pretty sure I have a Katrina shelf in my library.
That's sweet. You know, we set out to make the store that we would want to go to, that we
Mm,
felt where what is it that we feel like we can't get in our area that we would like to carry, and what would we like the atmosphere to be. One of the things we noticed right away is when you go into most metaphysical stores, there's nowhere to sit down. The
yes.
idea is you keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Now get out, buy something and get out. And we wanted to make sure that we had love seats and chairs and couches and things like that around the store so that people could sit and be comfortable and relax in the energy. For a while there, we had a lounge when we had the other classroom. And that lounge now has all of uh, our books and our tarot cards and our jewelry in it because we had to condense downward. But that lounge originally had a tea cart and cookies and just a place to kick it, a TV. And now all of that is in our classroom so that our students can have the tea and cookies and such. But yeah, Eric and I felt very strongly about what we wanted in our store, and we're able to fulfill that. So we feel pretty excited about what Crossroads became in its lifetime.
Yes, and there's we also thought of the chairs thing too. Although
Good for
it was
you.
first opening months, it was like it took a little while for it to set in. There were no chairs, and then people would I'd just be like, hey, well, let's just sit on the floor. Like we've got a bunch of pillows and yoga mats, and then we finally graduated to chairs, and we would have tea and everything like that. And then I got tired of washing dishes, and so we didn't have tea anymore. But that's not why we're here, guys.
Nope.
Happy New Moon. For some, it's already happened. For others, they're getting into the energy, and I mean across the world, and we hope to be reaching you all across the world.
I haven't
Um,
looked. What does that new moon look like for us? Have you looked into it?
oh, nothing but, I mean, like, energetically, personally, I'm just like, I was born on a new moon, so they're always exhausting. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to take my time, recalibrate, call all parts back to me. I try to take a page out of the Witchy Wicca handbook and do some shadow work around this time because it's the dark moon. But no, I didn't. I didn't actually look it up. Because I I value it a lot. We've talked about it on the show, like these cosmic predictions. But then sometimes I don't want to get swooped up into the mass hysteria.
Mm.
Uh, you better get your shit together because it's a new moon. Like I just don't. I don't. It's not this one, guys. Miss me with that on this time.
You know, new moon work is something that is not often pursued, even by dedicated coven schedules.
Oh,
They're all
interesting.
about the full moon, you know, as far as uh, coming together, and once a month when the moon is full, some secret place we will gather. And so they're all about the full moon, they're all about the Sabbats, but I've been in a lot of covens. They're just kind of like, yeah, we're meeting too often. You do your own shadow work, do your own new moon stuff. But new moon is really valuable. That's the time when you work on the things that are hidden away, that aren't being shown in full illumination. So it can be a good opportunity, but like you're saying, it's one that you can, like all magic, it's one you can take or leave.
Yep.
You're never forced to engage that energy. That energy is there as an opportunity to you, should you choose to use it. And there's sometimes I'm really feeling it, that I'm really wanting to just dive deep and see what's there for me. And there's other times that I'm just feeling fragile and just not in a place to work on that. And with
Right.
full moon especially, the astrologers, it's amazing because it seems like lately every moon we have that's full is a super moon, and every moon has some big amazing thing going on with it, as though we have never had full moons before. And so that it does, full moon just has a better marketing department than new moon does.
Right. Right. And so this time, yeah, definitely a more settled energy, at least again on a personal scale. I built a pretty grid last night and really connected with it. I had a great night's sleep. Um, and like I said, new moons personally can be a little exhausting. Being born on one, I think I was like, am I reliving that like breech birth, almost died trauma? Like, what is happening every fucking new moon?
So
Um,
speaking of that, what you said before, everybody, if you are not connected with Dahlia on social media, you need to be, because she has a new project that is just amazing. Do you have any of those grids handy that you
I
can
don't.
show
Well,
them?
actually, hold on, I might.
So I'm gonna talk while you go. So she's been making these stone grids that are laser onto wood, and they are just beautiful. I would give anything to have them in my shop. They are amazing, and I would love to order one because they are just dynamite. Look at this beast. Is that not incredible? And I just love it. And she's been showing pictures of these on her social media, and my tongue is out and there's spit rolling off of it because I just love them. And I am all about my stone grids in our spell work for other people. We often will use a stone grid configuration of some kind, either intuited or one of the standard ones. And when she showed me that, I was just overcome. It was such
Oh,
thoughtful, beautiful work. And I really encourage all of you to explore that, because boy, that was amazing.
well, thank you. And what's really ridiculous about all this is that that grid was actually designed for the new moon, and I didn't even reach for it. I did a different one yesterday, but
So you
thank
did
you.
your new moon work. You just
It's a labor of love. So thank you for the socials, right? Like these are the things we're supposed to talk about. So both Katrina and I are on Instagram, but
yep.
you'll just have to find us. No, just kidding.
But
You will.
Katrina doesn't do her own Instagram. She has someone do it for her. I keep forgetting that I
Hey,
have Instagram. And it really, I don't want to say it bothers me because that sounds really bitchy, but I have people that will contact me on Instagram and I'm not there. I have a person, I have a a person that does that for me, and they don't always look at
um,
the messages. They just post stuff for me um, because I forget. And that was one of the energy exchanges for class was, look, I forget to do this and I really need to do this. If you can help me with it, I'd love it. And so people will contact me over there and then they'll get really pissed that I'm not answering. Even if I've told them a couple of times, look, you can catch me on Facebook, you can catch me on email, but I'm not really here. This is an illusion. When I go into
more of
my
a Wizard
Instagram,
of
it's
Oz
to look
type
at what y'all.
situation.
Yes. I'm looking at what y'all posted. I'm not looking at what I posted. I don't even know what I posted. Maria posted that.
Well, social media is it's a beautiful and terrible thing, right?
Yes.
And you're out living, same as anybody else. I mean, that's been my struggle, is like living life, and people are like, why don't you take pictures of that, or why don't you do a video? And I'm like, because why? But I get it now, and I have found the excitement to share,
Mm-hmm.
much like I love our broadcast here. It's our time to share, right?
Right.
So
With each other as
I
well, 'cause we never know what we're gonna say.
right, and then we get off on a tangent. I told you we were talking about something else. So let's talk about something that is very much a part of Katrina's world, and something that I would love to learn about, which is one of the Sabbats. So, like I said in the post, there's 8 Sabbats, I believe. I got a beautiful sundial from Denise, who I think might be on here, um, and it had all the Sabbats on it. I was so excited. So let's learn about Lammas today. What is that about?
Well, Lammas was originally called Loafmas,
Loaf.
and it loaf like because it celebrates the wheat and the first harvest. And wheat was one of the first things to come into harvest when we were agricultural people. And what's interesting is that when we look at the 8 Sabbats, we talk very freely about the agricultural cycle and what that's like. But that is the agricultural cycle for Europe and nowhere else
Oh,
in the
oh,
whole world, basically.
oh.
It's a little bit that way in the United States because there's parts of the United States that are on the same latitude as Europe. And so it does work out that way. But if you're talking to somebody who's below the equator, their Sabbats are going to be flipped.
Okay.
So they're going to be having a whole different conversation when we're having our conversation about llamas. They're probably going to be having a conversation about what I guess not Beltane, Imbolc or something. So it's really important that we take that into consideration when we're talking about the witchy Sabbats, because most of the traditions that use those Sabbats were formulated in Europe, so they followed those traditions.
That makes sense.
And right, so I mean, Lammas is another word. It's also called Lunasa, which is a celebration of the god Lu, who is the sun god. And it's just interesting stuff. It's you could fall down a huge rabbit hole with it. But basically what we're doing in this case is celebrating the first harvest, which is the time we start to get reward for all the magical output that we've had through the year.
Okay. The magical
So,
output being like seeds.
yes, what did we plant in the year? What did we want back in February, March, April? Those things are starting to come into fruition now because as people, we are accustomed to a cycle of growth. You know, we look at our magic a lot of times as what my friend in Texas used to call "rut now magic," which is when you want it right now. So, you know, I need money right now to pay my phone bill, or I need money right now to get the rest of my rent. Yeah, thanks, Timothy. I appreciate your input there. Um, but lots of different um, paths celebrate in different ways. So anyway, as I was saying, a lot of things we want immediately, and we get kind of locked into that immediate gratification. And the Sabbats are about long-term gratification. They are about what happens when um, we want to develop over time. What are the seeds that we, like you said, the seeds that we plant?
Hmm.
And so the first harvest is about those first things that come about. And historically, those are the things from your garden or from your
Hmm.
fields that you invested energy and time and planning into putting out there. And second harvest is usually the things that are in the field or in the woods that are wild, like the nuts and the apples and the fruits and things that are starting to come forward. And so that's
Now,
kind of a blessing from God and Goddess.
Timothy was mentioning on the coast, the first harvest is fish.
Yeah, I'm not
Sometimes.
sure which coast that is. If I guess any coast would be a harvest of fish.
Yeah.
So
So
so Yeah, so it's just about things starting to come into fruition in a really positive way. And I know a lot of people who are seeing that in their lives right now, that change is happening. Long-term plans are starting to formulate and come into reality, and it tends to follow that cycle. So that's all I was going to say about that specifically. I don't mean to like get off on a tangent, not or a soliloquy, I guess I'd say.
That used to be one of my favorite words.
It's a good
In any case.
word.
So with llamas, it's about pulling up the first harvest from all that was planted over the year. I know in the show we've talked about sometimes you plant something and it wasn't meant to grow, or, when you go to pull it back up, like that's the redirect, is it's not coming out the way you thought it would, or it's not coming out at all.
Sure. And sometimes you plant green beans and you get corn. We've had my husband and I have practiced for over 25 years this practice of planting something important in the spring equinox and seeing what comes up. And you mentioned redirects. And I remember one time we were in a really dire place. It was a horrible time of our lives. And we were planting some, I don't remember what it was exactly, but it was something big. And I came in from just a brief break to go to the bathroom, as so often happened with my younger son Nathan when he was a toddler, and he had just wrecked shop. I mean, this kid would wait for me to go to the bathroom and then would do all kinds of horrible things. And we're talking about a 2 or 3 year old. And I would think I had my house dialed for baby safe. And this kid just defied everything in a matter of 3 minutes that I was in the bathroom. I remember one time I came in from the bathroom, not just number 1, not number 2, I mean, it was super fast, and he was standing over the turtle tank, and he had thrown all sorts of things into the turtleneck. Like, he had found a package of Stacker 2 somewhere that was still sealed, I mean, but he threw it into the turtle tank, and cayenne powder and pencils and like everything you don't want your toddler to get in touch with. He had somehow sifted out of this little house. And he was just a rampager, this kid. Anyway, so I came in this time, and every March when we would do spring equinox, Eric and I would plant beans in a little planter or a little tea what do you call it? Come on, brain. Flower pot. And the way that the beans grew would tell us what to expect for our harvest.
Oh, nice.
And so we would nurture those plants along, and that was part of our magic. And when they came into fruition, we knew the harvest would be rich and abundant because that was going to happen along about Beltane. So it was kind of a little precursor of what was going to come. And so we had planted our little beans, and I went to the bathroom and came back, and even though they were on a tippy top shelf, Nathan had managed to get up there and get our planters and just ripped them out and threw them onto the ground and dumped the dirt out and was just laughing. It was so fun. And it absolutely sounds like I do not know how to watch my children. But I have 6, and he was the youngest of 6, and I only had the 3 little ones at the time, and we were good. He was just better. This kid was hell on wheels, and anybody who was around that house at that time would be like, "Yeah, damn." But, so we had to look at that as a redirect. That, hey, whatever we were planting, it wasn't supposed to, and they were already up. I mean, they were growing. And we knew that there was going to be something at the last minute that happened that caused a regroup. And sure enough, with that goal, there was. So we had to reframe what our goal was in order to be able to have a successful harvest. And so if you watch your redirects, boy, they're just as important as your big outcome.
Wow. I I don't know if I'd have been sane or clear enough to see, oh, look at this universal symbol. I'd have been like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
like
girl, that was not my immediate thought. I literally sat on the floor. I mean, because remember, again, we were at a time in our lives that was just, it was horrible. He was getting layoff after layoff after layoff.
oh, this
There
was
was
that time.
we were literally eating the food that the guy at the homeless shelter brought at the end of the day that the homeless people didn't eat. He would drop it off at our house. It was a terrible time in our lives, and we were so distraught. And I remember Eric was working something like 65 hours a week at this job that he hated just to have enough money to pay the rent and get by. And I just collapsed into the floor and started to cry as soon as I saw that. It was just, I was inconsolable. I couldn't
Yeah.
even tell Eric what happened for a day or two because I was so sad. And I just was holding on to Nathan, who had done this. And he was nervous because I was crying, and I'm just holding him and rocking and trying to get him to calm down. But I was more upset than he was. So, again, a huge story just to say that there are redirects and they come in weird ways sometimes. But it took us a while to really, and after I talked to Eric about it, we were like, well, maybe we planted the wrong thing, or maybe we planted it in the wrong way and need to
Right.
rethink that. And it was a good change, but in the moment, it was just, one of those fuck me times. Like, how much more can we get beaten down? And so it's interesting for Eric and I now to be in a place where money isn't too much of an issue, where we don't have those stresses, and to remember those times and how absolutely challenging they were. It was just un unmanageable.
Right.
And we both had just such profound grief and pain and frustration. It was a weird time.
And I think it's important to highlight, like if you're out there with kids now, there is an okay threshold where they do something and all you can do is cry. Like that's the
Lord,
proper
yes.
reaction. Have had it myself.
If
Have
you're
two.
doing that every time they do something, then you might need some help beyond just a good cry. But,
Right?
Dahlia and I are here for you. But yeah, I mean, it's no joke. That stuff is really tough, and a lot of times your kids are your message. Now, no kid should come into the world with a job.
No.
They shouldn't come into the world with the idea of our job is to save mommy and daddy's marriage, or our job is to make grandma and grandpa happy because they want grandbabies. No
Mm-mm.
kid should come in with a job, but inadvertently, sometimes those kids are your lesson in some
Man,
way.
they will take initiative though.
Out of the mouths of babes and out of the hands of those little fuckers, man.
Yeah. And so I was reminded in this moment thinking about the harvest, and I was like, well, asking the question in my head, like, what if you don't plant anything? And instantly I got the answer that you always plant something, whether it is
Yeah.
intentional or
Mhm.
unintentional. And sometimes you're planting you, and now all of a sudden, you're things are shifting, things are changing for you on a personal level. So there's,
Yeah.
even if you're like, oh no, I missed the spring equinox, wait for it. You're gonna see what grows, and even if it's not abundance or any of the traditional things, it could be new relationships, it could be new boundaries, it could be some very personal
Yeah.
um, some very personal things that maybe don't show on the outside.
Well, we
Um,
had years, like you were saying, that we didn't feel like we felt so blessed that we didn't feel like there was anything pressing that we needed to plant. So we just planted what we called mystery seeds. So
okay.
we would just mix up some seeds without looking at what it was and just poke those into the earth. And or another thing that was fun for that is we'd do jelly beans and we'd eat them. So that was like planting seeds inside ourselves, and you
Okay,
don't
I
know
love
what
it.
it is because it doesn't have, squash on the front or something like that. And, we would just say, "What is best for us and what we need to have to grow is what will grow." And it was always something wonderful we hadn't thought of, or something came up in the interim because, our cusp program assumes you know what you need in March, and you don't always.
No,
When something comes up around June, well, you know what? We plant late crops as well. So you just get your planting in there when you need to. But yeah, you're
right.
you're absolutely right. It's
I love the idea of jelly beans. I love that. I might,
it's in the book.
I might go like chocolate covered beans or something
Yeah,
like that. But
like
the idea is the same.
chocolate covered peanuts, or, just anything like that. Just, well, I'm planting this inside myself.
Yeah, I love it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
all the idea of planting and then harvesting, what we're talking about is going through changes. And so, change is never, I'm not going to say it's never fun. Change is change is neutral, and then we apply emotions to it. And so, as we're going through personal changes, I think there's an opportunity to incorporate fun things like eating jelly beans, um, also just saying no to the moon, if that's what's going on for you. Um, when it comes to dealing with personal change, there's a lot of different avenues I can take, and you don't have to. This is not a place where you have to explain to people why you're doing what you're doing, why you're going through what you're going through. It's your self soothe. And so like there's so many different things that you can do, but one of the things that you and I specialize in is, well, I would say you more than me, because I don't get as many remote healing appointments, but I have them. Um, is remote healing. You were reconnecting with that joyful work over the weekend, I think, right?
On a teaching level, I did. I'm still on medical leave until Wednesday, but I had a class I needed to start up that was the Master Healer class. And it was a class that was on remote healing. So it was really, really enjoyable to teach that again. It was my first class since the surgery. And then I'll be back working full time next week. But I really love remote healing. I found that I feel like I do better work with remote healing than I do in-person work. But that's,
I,
just me.
but I think that's most people, and I think it's because it takes a level of concentration that can be like slightly manipulated when you're in person. Like for instance, for me, when I'm doing in-person work, I'm monitoring everything. They're breathing, they're twitching, they're moving. Where I place the crystal, is it causing them distress? Because no
Mhm.
matter how many times I say, hey, if anything's wrong, tell me. If you're uncomfortable, tell me. Most people don't. And so there's so much to monitor. Then, there's music, there's incense. Is the bed too hot because I use a biomat? Like, what's going on? There's so many things. And with distance work, you have your surrogate, you have your tools, and depending on the type of distance work you're doing, either the person is on the phone or they're not present at all. You're just dealing with their energy, and it's I think such a more clear moment. There's no distractions, or at least there shouldn't be.
I agree. And for me, I found that if it's in person or if even at a distance work, if the person knows when I'm going to be there, they're braced for it. Even if it's something they want, they tend to, okay, what's it going to feel like? Okay, and they're scanning to see what they feel, and so they're so distracted by the fact that I'm doing the work that it's harder for me to get in there because they automatically put up this shield. With
Mm,
distance work, I don't tell my people when I'm gonna be doing it. I
right.
say, "Okay, I'll get you tell me what's going on, okay? I'll get you a report back within 24 hours." And then that gives me the opportunity, if I can't get successfully access their energy at one time, I can try again in an hour or 2, or maybe later at night when they're sleeping and get that work done, because if they're braced up, it's really it's harder for me to get in. And I enjoy doing the remote work because I can get access to people that I can't access in person. So, you know, quite frankly, and I was talking in class about this too last night, one of the areas that is of the greatest concern to both genders and also to those who don't identify as either gender or as both is an area that is uncomfortable for us to access often in in-person healings.
Oh yes.
And so, this way, when if someone is having some sort of manifestation of symptom is coming from shame or from abuse or something around their genitals, then or their bottom or someplace I wouldn't normally be touching very much in an in-person healing, I can have access on that through the proxy vessel or the um, what was the word you used rather than S? What did you say instead of
Surrogate.
surrogate? So that I'm able to work directly with that area without embarrassment or making the client feel uncomfortable. Sometimes, if people are having um, unrequited love feelings or issues with the heart chakra, if you have your hand on their chest for too long, males
Mm-hmm.
and females will get uncomfortable because that's
Yep.
such a vulnerable place of the body. For warrior spirits, that's a place they're always supposed to be protecting. And
Mm-hmm.
so having another energy personally on that for a long time can get uncomfortable. And also if you have somebody on a mat or on a massage table, their body can get uncomfortable being in one place, and if I need them in that back lying position longer, their discomfort is going to start to compromise the energy. So with a proxy vessel or a surrogate, I can just do whatever I need to do to get access to that energy. So that's why it's easier for me.
Yeah, yes. One of the things that I love about these things too is being touch sensitive myself. I always try to accommodate what others say and what they don't. And and as far as like teaching, I'm always one of the more prevalent jokes I tell my students is you cannot touch a person's root chakra without their permission. And it's like a joke and it's not, right? Because
Hmm.
people are like, oh, the root chakra, you know. And I'm like, do you know actually like where it is? Because just reaching in and being like, you're blocked, you're going to block more things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And it's really hard to treat someone's root chakra with them present.
So, in all of this conversation of treatment and things like that, as you're going through, Sabbats, changes, life scenarios, one thing that can be helpful is distance healing work. And then um, if you are trained, like let's say it's distance Reiki, so that'd be like level 2, you can even
Mhm.
go into distance work of, the past as opposed to just, across space. You can actually go across time and really get a chance to see, I think, in the case of what we're talking about, um, maybe that harvest didn't come up the way that it needed to.
Mhm.
You're not approaching the distance healing work to say, I need to fix this right now, but what can I do for future scenarios? How can I best support, or how can I heal from this need to fulfill this thing that maybe isn't even on my path. Maybe it was given to me from my parents, or maybe it's FOMO, feelings of missing out.
Mhm.
There's a lot of opportunities with distance work that span beyond just space.
That's absolutely true, and, they say that you cannot change your past, but you certainly can, because what you look back on in your past is your perspective of what happened, and going back and holding space for yourself and sending healing energy and Reiki energy to that person that you were back then is so helpful in healing your past and your situation. It doesn't change the fact that this, whatever trauma it was, occurred, but it does change your ability to process it and move past it and be able to engage it in a healthy way rather than just collapsing into sobs every time you think about it.
Right.
And yeah, it's been a real effort for me because I didn't start doing that until I was around 55 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a lot of past there to heal and to go back into. And it's almost a nightly thing now of going back and finding some place and trying to heal myself in the past so that I can have a better present now in regard to that experience.
And there's so much application for body healing as well. If you've ever gotten a massage and all of a sudden you burst into tears when the masseuse hit that one spot
Mhm.
and it wasn't pain, it was just emotion. as you're applying, maybe it's distance work, crystal work, energy work of some kind, and intention. I mean, we could even be talking about just love based intention. You get an opportunity to work on root causes as opposed to just trying to slap band-aids on things or doing the as Katrina said, the right now
The root now
magic.
magic, yeah.
So it can be a really beautiful thing to have that kind of support. And then if you're learning these things on your own, which I guess if you're in the California area, I don't know if Eric is teaching Reiki anytime soon, but find yourself a teacher and get up to level 2 and learn that work, or work through the Akashic records if you're not into formal energy work.
For
And teaching.
those that are local, he is teaching 1 and 2 in August,
Oh,
and then he's
cool.
teaching a second level 2 in September.
Perfect. So
Yep.
there's a lot of opportunities, and what I love is that we don't have to just fall into the place of victimhood, And I have to say, it took me a while to kind of not succumb. I can doomsday with the best of them if I really get into it. And then, being around people like Katrina, being around other individuals that seek balance first, it was like a switch flipped. I think also having a business, because you can't, like, if you're sad and you're because something shifted in your business, you can't just be like, oh, because the government don't care, neither do the people
Mm-mm.
who own your lights, electricity, and everything else. And so you kind of have to regroup, and after you've grieved, have that space of, okay, you know where can I apply the most amount of energy and see the most amount of return. And that might not be in the grief, it might be in the energy work, it might be in the candle, it might be in the, okay, well, let's just plan for the next Sabbath what we're going to do kind of situation, or the next lunar cycle, as it were.
It really gets tough when you're doing coven work for a large number of people, and you do experience, and it's similar to the business aspect, where you do experience some kind of personal issue, and you've got to go into a Sabbath and send the magic to those people when you yourself are having a crisis. And you know, most groups are pretty forgiving as far as, okay, she's having a tough time. Let's just we'll just go in and carry the ritual ourselves. Some of the other elders in the group can, but there comes a time where it's like, hey, aren't you supposed to be our leader here? Why are you falling apart? And we've had lots of conversations about that on this show, about
Right.
um, how sometimes it can be really difficult to be that person in the leading perspective. And I remember one of the most valuable conversations of my life I had with an author named Janet Farrar, who
Mm-hmm.
is one of the pioneers of Wicca. And she and I were at the same Pagan Pride Festival. And I was honored to have some private time with her. And I said, what do you do when you're having a crisis and you're falling apart and you've still got a Sabbath to perform? And she said, honey, you just go out there and you show them how it's done. She said, it's your job to be able to manage that. You wouldn't have been called to both if you weren't supposed to be there for both. And she was wonderful, and she was right. You have a job that you do. And sometimes you have to put your own personal stuff aside for a little bit for a greater good.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the store, but there comes a time with the store where you're saying, this isn't feeling like the right thing to do anymore. I think that I'm phoning it in, or I think that
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting to a place where this isn't fulfilling to me anymore. And so that energy is going to transmit to the people who come in. I see way too many places that stay open as a retail concern or as a service concern, well past the time they should, just because of finances.
Yep.
And so they're not in it with a good heart. They're in it because they need the money. And you can never, ever, ever, God help you folks, ever, A, become an author, B, become a teacher, or C, run a metaphysical concern because you need the money. Those are those are all very bad moves.
Right. You might as well go into stock trading and know nothing
Yep.
and just let it drain you dry than to go in expecting right off the bat that those things will have a turnaround. I mean, you definitely got to have, um, you've got to be in it for a different reason. You've got to.
There's a saying in the we I live in wine country out here in California, and there's a saying that is if you want to make $1 million with a winery, start out with $2 million.
Oh my God.
It's kind of like that with, any type of metaphysical concern. You have to do it because you love it and because your heart's in it and because it's what you're led to do, not because you think it's going to be a good financial investment.
Right. Right. And realize that there are other means if it's about finances, combining finances and metaphysics. There's so many different opportunities out there now, but um, you know, the show is really about empowerment, and I think that getting to know your intentions and whys also helps with those redirects, the harvest, planting something and not getting something that you expected. Like maybe
Hmm.
some aspect of the changes that are coming up for you, or the harvest not being what you want, is that your intentions weren't in the right place. They weren't aligned, or they were, I've seen these things happen with people whose intentions are not refined. They're in 8 million different places, so there's not even enough energy
Hmm.
to engage with
Absolutely.
harvesting something.
It's a fine balance because I've seen it too with people whose intentions are too refined.
Hmm.
And so, what Eric and I have always put out there is, let's say that you want to manifest a vehicle because you need a new vehicle. Well, first of all, you want a vehicle that runs. You want a vehicle that isn't going to require a lot of maintenance. You probably want a vehicle that looks nice, so
Right.
that you don't feel embarrassed to drive it. And so we have a basis of what we're looking for. Go with that idea of what you want, but then you get people who say, I want a powder puff blue 1965 Mustang, you know, and that way they miss out on the nice, you know, SUV they could have gotten. And so it's about finding that balance. And the way that we kind of dealt with that is we said, imagine the feeling you want to have,
Mm-hmm.
because all magic comes from emotion. Every magic you ever do comes from some sort of emotion that you have. And so, if you track back to that, think about how you want to feel driving that car. How do you want to feel walking into your new house? What is it you're trying to manifest? And what is the feeling that's behind it? Sometimes somebody will have huge goals like, I want a new car. I want enough money to be comfortable. I want a new house. I want, to be able to get a whole new wardrobe. And when you
Mm-hmm.
look at those, you can boil all of that down to, I want to be financially secure.
Right.
And that way
Right.
you can target in what they're really looking for rather than, okay, we're going to have all these symptoms of what I need that are manifesting as desires when this is actually what I need.
And
So,
then part two is recognizing when that feeling that you want shows up in something unexpected,
yeah.
and then embracing the that the universe heard the words behind your words and
Yes.
crafted the better option.
There
Um,
was I wrote an article one time about what I think it was a Pathos article about what to do if your harvest doesn't come in. And then one of the first things you do is look at it and see, did it really not happen?
mm,
I had one person that their house was being sold that they were renting and they loved that house, but they said, this is a great time for us to move into something new. And so they get all excited about buying a new house and they keep getting shot down. They get in
mm,
these bidding wars with people. They have one house that their credit wasn't quite where it should be to get the loan for that house. And they're just having 7, 8, 9 houses that they're losing out on. They're getting really depressed about it. And as they got to harvest, the owner decided not to sell the house after all. And they were super disappointed and came to me for counseling about how depressed they were that they didn't get their harvest. What happened? I said, "Well, what did you plant? What were you looking for?" And they said, "Well, we wanted, a house where we felt safe, a house that we loved, a house that was really beautiful." I said, "Well, don't you feel that way about the house you've got?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, but we wanted a new house." Well, you didn't say that.
Right. New
So
was not on there.
sometimes it happens, but not in the way that you're seeing that, because it didn't fit into that framework of what you imagined your
Right.
outcome would be.
Right. So keep eyes wide open for sure. It's a delicate balance, and you can always check the probabilities of things as they start to materialize to say, like, is it probable that this will happen? I mean, there's a lot of interesting pendulum work that can be done to do that. And then, of course, you can always book an appointment with me or Katrina and hey, this was what I planted. What's the
Yeah.
outcome? And then step 3 is accept the answer. Don't be like, well, that's not what I wanted to hear. Well,
Yeah.
you don't pay anybody for that. At least not psychically. I hope not.
And also remember that sometimes the answer you get from the universe isn't no, it's not yet
Right.
or not right now. And just know that the universe is so good at saying, wait for it, wait for it. It's going to be so good. Just wait for it. And your outcome is almost always better if you just relax into how the universe is addressing your needs that you put out there.
It's almost as if the universe gets slight pleasure from it because it happens so often.
We are but ants in an ant farm. I think a lot about how you came into having your crystal cognizance shop, and that story kind of being an interesting outcome of weird circumstances. And do you want to tell them about that a little bit, or is that too personal?
No, no. I mean, I've shared a little bit before. I don't know how far I went back, so I know I wasn't sharing this before. I don't think I've shared this before. I was actually planning on leaving my job. Wound up pregnant. Not wound up. I mean, I know how I got there. And Mason was like, "Gotcha. Okay." So pregnancy happened, and I was like, you know what? I'm in a pretty safe space at this job. They love me. I love them. I'm taken care of. Like, yes. And then it was no. It was like universe was like no, 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 no. And there were a lot of circumstances that took place where I was like, okay, well, what happens if I leave? What happens if I leave after maternity? If I don't come back after maternity leave? And I scared Virgo was like, okay, here's the leap. So I took it, thinking the universe caught me in the part-time healing job I already had. I was going to be able to take Mason with me. I was able to, work interesting hours and have to pay for daycare. Didn't have to worry about anything serious. And so I'm working, things are great, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm gonna stay here. Like I'm gonna do something with this. Look at me being a Reiki master. Yes. And then literally I got there. They were in their lease for I think another 2 years. And then I got there and they were like, okay, we're gonna close in 2 months. And I was like, what? What do you mean I just got here? So okay. I had we had been I think a year in, maybe two, of my meditation group. I'd been practicing Reiki and everybody was just like, why don't you just go and open up your own store? And then I mean, like, how? Where do you begin? Where do you start? And it didn't seem like an opportunity to me. It seemed like a shut door. And then we crowdfunded a little bit, and then I did end up leaving my job. The crystal shop that I was in doing Reiki in closed, like they said they were going to, and for a good reason, right? Like on their end, it was good, it was positive. But for me, it was like devastating. And then I was like, I don't know where we're going to come up with this money. And then I got a call from my job, and they're like, hey, you have this 401k that you've been investing in for 8 or 9 years. What are you going to do with it? And I was like, my what? Because you don't see that money, it just
Mhm.
disappears. And it was enough to open the store. And then not only that, looking for places to open a store was nuts. None of the realtors wanted to talk. And I was like, if I'm supposed to do this, why are all these people so mean? Like, they're supposed to be like, yes, this community needs healing. Bring it. And no, they were not. Except for the one for the place that I'm in right now. Alan was amazing. And he was like, yeah, I'll show it to you. And I was like, well, I don't, do you need anything from me? And he was like, no, come on by. And I walked in. I actually had the place wrong. I thought it was across the pond in these little dank offices with CPAs and lawyers. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to work that out with healing work. But then I found this place, walked in, there was a dumpster in the middle of the floor, but this massive bay window. And I was like, I'm home. And the rest was history. I mean, literally, like from them taking care of me twice with the rent, making it perfect. They like painted the walls and helped let me choose the floors before I put down my deposit. Like everything. Once I took my hands off the wheel and was like, okay, universe, you're not moving fast enough. And once I stopped fidgeting with what was supposed to unfold, it literally lined up. And I don't know what seed I planted, but it was more beautiful than I could have imagined. And now we have this amazing community that now gets to shop regular hours.
That is
Like,
awesome.
we've opened back up. Yeah. So that's my maddening story. Like, and then I mean the madness continues. Even having to plant seeds for making rent each month. That's always a thing
While
because it's
asking to
never
make
about the
more
rent.
than rent.
Well, right. And that
Yeah.
was a lesson in and of itself. I mean, and it's never been about the rent. And so when you start planting seeds, you're like, oh, I want to help people, and then okay, yeah, you help people, and no, we can't pay rent this month. It's coming up, and then like December 29th, boom,
Mhm.
rent check, and it's like, you know, so it's madness.
It
Those
is.
those redirects, those planting seeds, all of it is maddening, but it's all for your highest and best good. And that's the most bullshit answer on the planet, but it is.
It's very, very true. And that's why it's so important that we do be considerate about what we want to see in our lives with the idea that we can't see it all. And
Right.
and that's something else I've always told people is, we are in the tapestries. We are these little guys holding onto the threads of a tapestry, and we can see that this part is red and that part over there is blue, and just get a feel of that there's some changing textures out there, but we don't quite know what they are. Fortunately, the universe is able to see the whole picture that's on that tapestry. And they can see that if we start to do a little bit of green here, it's going to mess up the flow of this daisy field, or, it's as though there is a knowledge of how our actions can affect our best outcome later. And sometimes we inadvertently get in our own way. If you had done the Virgo thing and said, "No, I'm going to go back after maternity leave because this is where the safe place is. This is where I
Right.
can have an income." If you had not been willing to be the fool card, and take that leap of faith, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
We would not. I'd have been like,
And
what do you
so,
mean,
yeah.
witches? What do you mean?
But yeah, I think that Virgos do not get enough credit for the times when they really do just let go and let God and just jump off that cliff.
hmm
That's
Listen,
hard.
especially when sometimes the answer is neutral. It's like both paths could plausibly work out. And it's
Mhm.
like,
Pisces are really crazy about, they like that. There's two streams here. We can swim in either one.
Yes, we know you're two fish, but both fish have to go
Yeah,
together.
right, right. And
Oh
Leos
my
are
god,
like, look at me, I'm jumping off the cliff. Look at me.
right?
So
Oh
you have
man.
different people just really approach those challenges in different ways. But Dahlia and I are the ones sitting back having an intellectual conversation about the air velocity of a European swallow as it jumps off the cliff. And are we going to die? Are we going to crash on the rocks below? And yeah.
Are we gonna die? Never that. Well, not never. There's a time. You know, I had uh I had ordinations here for the Order of Melchizedek a couple months back. And the guy who is facilitating them, he's amazing, Reverend Dan Chesbrough. He's written a ton of books, and I highly recommend them. And then if you go to his website, I think it's like the Sanctuary of the Beloved, you can find out where he's going to be in the country because he travels and does these ordinations. Anyway, he came here and he's giving these lovely stories and talks. And at one point, he said, you know, you're going to die at some point. But if you don't die, it wasn't your time. And that's okay. And like, so keep going. And it was the simplest, like, logical. It was like, yeah, okay. So I guess I could just go out and do the thing and take the chance and leap off the cliff and see what happens. But every time I might feel like I'm going to die, but I should keep going. Like, the worst thing that could happen afterward would literally be death, like hit the rocks. But
Mhm.
I was saying, wee, all the way down, you know?
It's just the
And
sudden stop that's the problem. It's not the trail.
right?
There was that
So
that reminds me of, just very quickly, the thing of how did it go? Something about it's all going to be okay at the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end yet.
yes, yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, Lammas is coming. I don't know the exact date.
It's usually, most people celebrate around the 1st or 2nd of August.
Okay. Oh, like that is days away.
Yes,
Fuck.
it's right there.
So whatever you planted is about to come smack you in the face, or you're gonna get a universal redirect, or whatever it may be. But if it's not the end, it's not over. That's something we can take away from this for sure. And change is necessary. And if you need that support, you know, you can always reach out.
And you're
Um,
probably not going to die.
Probably not going to die.
Probably
Neither of
not
us
going
is
to
going
die.
to. We don't, you know, we don't do those things. Um,
I don't like risk, and I don't like uncertainty, and I don't like big things pending that could go sideways. So
Agreed. Agreed. I
the
absolutely
Eric
agree.
risk is inherent in life and so exciting. He's a Scorpio, and
Yeah, I
he
was gonna say
loves that gamble, loves that risk.
that's Scorpio nonsense. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Ah,
Yep.
leave me alone. I'm poor little Virgo. Leave me to my security.
When we first got married, it was so bizarre because we couldn't have any consistency. We would make plans, and you know how we Virgos like our plans. We like a schedule, and we would make plans and discuss them going to sleep that night. By the time he woke up the next morning, we weren't going to do that. We were going to do something different. And it was absolutely maddening. It took forever for us to find our comfort with that. And so I really hear you, honey, about the the big jumps of faith and all that. It's just, and he's the first one to want to do that. I mean, he will quit
So
a job if it feels right to do it.
you guys balance each other out at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it's okay. At the end of the day, it's safe.
So on that note, guys, enjoy your llamas. Likes, comments, tell us about it. I mean, it's supposed to happen in a couple of days. By next Thursday, it will have happened, and maybe you'll have some insight and awareness on what's been going on, what you need to do, and where you need to be next time.
And also
But
remember, by the way, I'm sorry, Dahlia, to
no,
interrupt
no, no.
again. with Lammas, it doesn't, your harvest doesn't just back up in a UPS truck on your porch on that 1st or 2nd of August. It's a whole 6-week process.
Oh,
And then
nice.
you get
Okay.
into second harvest, which is another 6-week process. So we got 12 weeks of harvest between now and Halloween. So lean into it.
Lean in. It's not over, guys. All right. We will see
Yep.
you next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Thank you for participating, and we'll talk to you next Thursday. Bye, everyone.